Let's tackle a big one today. Cancer, the second leading cause of death worldwide, at least officially. Heart disease is still listed as number one, although sometimes I do wonder. If doctors don't know what really caused the death, they can often just write heart failure, which happens to everyone at the end, right? The heart stops. So how many deaths blamed on the heart could actually be something else entirely? But let's stay focused on cancer for now. So my dad died of cancer. At least that's what the death certificate said. But I believe he actually died of something else. Emotional isolation, probably. My mom also had breast cancer. A mild one, thankfully. She's still with us and doing well. And outside the family, I've lost friends to cancer. Others are still fighting it. So it's very personal for all of us. I mean, who doesn't know someone, a parent, a partner, a friend, whose life was cut short or whose identity got swallowed by this disease? Cancer feels like a modern plague. Sure, it probably existed in ancient times, but not like this. Not in these numbers, which keep growing. Today, it's in every family, every community, every country. We're pouring billions into cancer research every year. And yet, what do we really have to show for it? Every so-called breakthrough seems to be a new protocol that costs a fortune, extending life by a few months, perhaps, while wrecking the body in the process. Let's be honest, the classic radiation, chemotherapy, these aren't cures. They don't ask why the weeds grow. They just burn down the whole garden, hoping for the best. And the price we pay is not even a secret anymore. Just do a Google search. A large study from the National Cancer Institute found that patients treated with chemo for tumors between the years 2000 and 2014 had an increased risk of developing secondary leukemia, the cancer of the blood. A 2013 study found that chemo for early-stage breast cancer can itself cause leukemia. Even the American Cancer Society openly admits on its website both chemo and radiation can raise the risk of developing new cancers later on. And a 2024 study published in the Journal of the American Cancer Society found that older cancer survivors who had received chemo were more likely to suffer heart failure, strokes, and heart attacks later on. So, are we really healing people? Or are we just extending the clock while the body pays the price? Like so much of modern medicine, I think we've misunderstood cancer. Not because we're stupid, but because we lack the emotional maturity and probably the spiritual humility to embrace a new paradigm. Oh, and yes, there's also the billion-dollar pharmaceutical industry profiting from the current state of things. Let's not pretend that doesn't matter. I mean, we can see what Robert Kennedy Jr. is trying to do in the States right now, regarding vaccines and food additives, based on some pretty solid science. And yet, Big Pharma is putting up quite some resistance, right? Same thing for cancer. Same thing for everything that allows the system to turn sick people into lifelong customers. So what really causes cancer? We've all heard the line, it's genetic, or maybe it's a genetic mutation. But that narrative is slowly crumbling. Dr. Bruce Lipton, former Stanford researcher and author of The Biology of Belief, flipped the script years ago. Genes, he says, are just blueprints. They don't decide anything by themselves. It's the environment that tells the genes what to do. That includes our food, our air, our thoughts, our traumas. So no, cancer is not primarily genetic. Of course, the mainstream scientific community, which has everything to gain from maintaining the current belief system, calls this pseudoscience. What is true is something for everyone to decide for himself, based on the facts, our sense of reason, and probably based on our intuition as well. But back to cancer. Cancer is about toxicity, plain and simple. We are drowning in it, first from our food, the pesticides, herbicides, antibiotics, additives, preservatives, heavy metals. You can thank industrial agriculture and industrial farming for that, but you can also blame it on our addiction to convenience, which drives the type of foods, especially the ultra-processed ones, that end up on our plates. Then we have the toxins from our homes: soaps, creams, air fresheners, bleaches, scented candles, shampoos, and everything that has an ingredient called fragrance in it. There are microplastics, forever chemicals, hormone disruptors, things we still barely understand. There's the air we breathe, especially in cities. For those who live in the worst environments, the pollution we inhale each week might have taken our grandparents a year to accumulate. And when many people start having respiratory issues because of the horrible air quality, we call it a viral pandemic. We also have electromagnetic frequencies, cell towers, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all invisible noise interfering with our cells' natural rhythms and communication systems. Because our body is also electric, right? And finally, there's one thing that many people don't automatically think about: our emotions. Because no detox protocol is complete or effective if we haven't detoxed our grief, our rage, our shame. Dr. Reich Gerd Hammer, founder of German New Medicine, studied thousands of cancer cases and found something quite striking. Almost every cancer diagnosis came after a major unresolved emotional trauma: a divorce, a death, a betrayal, a shock. That tells you something. Generally, when we live in a constant state of fight or flight, our bodies can't heal. The immune system slows down, inflammation rises, and the terrain becomes fertile, not for life, but for disease. So what are we doing about all of this? Not much really, or perhaps a lot, but mostly wasting resources for research on outdated health models and feeding the media with fear-mongering theories. We're too busy sounding the alarm about the next virus, while cancer kills over 10 million people every single year. But there's hope, because people do recover. Sometimes, yes, with surgery or chemo, at least for the short term, but usually and more permanently, with lifestyle changes so deep they reshape their entire being. Those include detox, fasting, emotional healing, spiritual reconnection, and deep nourishment, body, mind, soul. Because once we understand that cancer is a result of toxicity, the next step becomes clear. Detoxify, clear the internal clutter, give the body the chance to breathe again, to do what it already knows how to do. So let's talk a bit more about those cancer cells. First, many don't know this, but our bodies create and eliminate cancer cells every single day. The immune system sees them, handles them, and moves on. It's only when our internal environment becomes too toxic or too depleted that the system can't keep up and the process stalls. We also know that cancer cells thrive in low oxygen environments. They feed on sugar and simple carbs. They weaken when we fast or switch to high-fat, low-carb diets. And they also seem to lose their grip when the body is strong, balanced, and well-nourished. This is the basis of metabolic therapy, a concept promoted by researchers like Dr. Thomas Seyfried in his book Cancer as a Metabolic Disease. He's been saying this for years, but of course, you won't find him headlining pharmaceutical conferences. Now, here's something that's about going deeper into the rabbit hole and which might raise some eyebrows here. I personally don't think we're supposed to fight cancer, just like we're not supposed to fight the flu. Stay with me if you're curious. My basic premise is that the body has intelligence, an innate ancient intelligence, just like nature has intelligence, and our body is part of nature, right? The body knows how to clot blood, it knows how to close a wound, so why wouldn't it also know how to manage toxicity, in ways that perhaps we are not ready to fully understand? Here's the idea that hit me one day. What if cancer is a last resort detox system? Think about it. We suppress every fever, every rash, every cough with medication. We silence symptoms instead of listening to them. If we assume that many of those symptoms, which we call disease, are actually elimination pathways, in other words, detox mechanisms, then every time we take that cough syrup or those antibiotics, we interfere with our body's own cleaning system. Eventually, the body has no choice but to use last resort measures. So it builds a vault, a sealed off prison, a tumor, to trap what it cannot immediately eliminate, because it's tired, because it's overwhelmed. It does that to keep it from spreading, to protect the rest of the body. So we think the body is being hijacked, when maybe it's just adapting, doing ultimate damage control. So the tumor grows, it gets its own blood supply, not because it's a villain, but because it's like a biohazard containment site. And if that's correct, then it would make sense that the body actually helps to sustain it. Think about benign tumors for a moment. What really sets them apart from the malignant ones? Perhaps mainly the fact that they're more stable. They don't seem to grow much, they don't invade. But what if the underlying mechanism is the same? A containment strategy by the body. The only difference? The body doesn't feel the urgency to break it down. Maybe it's sealed off, secure, and no longer serving a purpose, not actively storing more toxins, not interfering with anything vital. So the body just leaves it alone. Because why waste energy fixing something that isn't broken? And that reminds me of something else. Think about prostate cancer for a minute. There's now a widely accepted medical protocol. Don't intervene. Just monitor. Watch. Because even mainstream medicine now admits that in most cases, going in and trying to cut it out would most likely cause more harm than good. Think about that. Even the conventional system in this case is saying, sometimes the wisest thing to do is to do nothing at all. Let the body be, observe, support, trust. I guess that's a move in the right direction. But I think there are still certain protocols that need serious rethinking. Going back to that malignant tumor, in most cases, when there are suspicions of cancer, you are referred for a biopsy, right? And what do? We poke the tumor, cut off a piece of it, and obviously we break the seal. Some say that when you do that, the cancer cells escape and migrate to other parts of the body, and that's bad. I prefer to think that it is the toxins that are actually escaping, and when that happens, the immune system scrambles, and if necessary, the body then starts building new containment zones elsewhere, anywhere those toxins may have landed. We call that metastasis. But maybe it's just our ultimate detox system being disrupted. Of course, that doesn't mean tumors are harmless. They can be dangerous, especially if they press on organs and cause these to stop functioning properly, or if they drain our energy because these prisons are using too many resources. But they are not the enemy. They are just the evidence of the body's effort to adapt. That means even surgery to remove a tumor has to be carefully carried out. A clean cut to ensure toxins don't spill over and enter the bloodstream. But anyway, instead of fighting those cancer cells, what if we supported the body instead with oxygen, clean food, stillness, love, forgiveness, space to breathe? And then the tumor no longer has a job to do. The cancer cells are not killed. They just sort of retire. Like construction workers after the road is fixed. They pack up their tools and they leave. Now, even if I'm wrong about all this, even if the body has become dysregulated and the cancer cells do need to be taken down, surely the answer still isn't to destroy the body in the process. Not with chemo, not with radiation, not even with shiny new labels like immunotherapy. Because unless we ask why the cancer appeared in the first place, we're just cutting off branches and pretending the tree is gone. I mean, why do so many tumors come back? Because we treat the symptoms, we ignore the soil it grew in. True healing begins where disease begins, in the terrain, the environment, the trauma, the toxic load. So even if one day we find a way to target cancer cells without doing any damage to the surrounding healthy cells, still, that would not really address the root cause, would it? Now, most of the scientists I've mentioned, the rebels, the researchers, the truth seekers, they don't go as far as calling cancer a friend, and that's okay. We don't need to romanticize it. Because either way, the path forward is the same. Detox, emotional healing, fasting, reconnection to nature, and to ourselves. I think that's the real medicine, whatever name we give the condition. So maybe the real fight isn't against cancer. Maybe it's against the conditions that made it necessary. Toxins, suppressed emotions, fear, disconnection, loneliness. Because maybe, just maybe, the body isn't trying to betray us. Maybe it's trying desperately to save us. So let's give it a chance. I'd love to know your thoughts about this. And just to be clear, obviously I'm not a doctor, and this isn't medical advice. Just a whisper, a reframe, a remembering. And while I may have come across perhaps as judgmentals in some parts, I think any judgment that I may have is directed only at our resistance to change and not the individual choices that we all make. I mean, some may choose chemo or radiation because they're advised to by doctors they trust, and that's their path. But I think we still all deserve to know that there's more to healing than drugs and scalpels. If this didn't totally blow your circuits, feel free to subscribe. There's a lot more sketchy science to unpack.